Hi, folks. Welcome to Disability Landscape. My name is Mark Knudsen, and as usual, I got my co-host today, Charlie Brose. Welcome, Charlie. How have things been going for you, sir?
Well, now that I'm not knocking on death's door, I'm doing a lot better.
That's good. Yeah, it's great to be back in studio with you, sir.
Yep.
Glad you got your back issues all solved.
Yeah,
that.
no kidding. So, Mark, I'm going to introduce our two guests because you're making me do it because you'll think I'll mess it up. But,
I want to see how you do it.
But we have Marie Clooney and Jillian Nelson here to talk about their experience enjoying The Tempest at the Guthrie Theater. Welcome, ladies, and let's talk with Jillian, because you have kind of a background with the folks at the Guthrie. What's the performance that you went to all about?
So The Tempest, the one we were at was the relaxed performance of The Tempest at the Guthrie Theater, and this is a commitment that they've made across the board.
Okay.
So a lot of their shows, they do relaxed performances, which are meant to be an open place for people with disabilities or people with sensory needs or people that just want a more relaxed theater experience to be able to attend and make theater more accessible. When this program initially started, it was several years ago, and they only did one show at that time, and it was the Christmas Carol. And I'll tell you honestly, that first Christmas when we did this program with them for the first time, like I was a Scrooge that year myself. I wasn't feeling the Christmas vibe. And then standing there in that theater and seeing all these families that suddenly had access to theater that wouldn't have been able to have access before, getting to share in the story of Ebenezer Scrooge in this beautiful theater. Like the Guthrie Christmas Carol is like, it's a Christmas tradition for so much of Minnesota.
Right.
And now it was accessible. And like
Were you involved in that very first one?
The very first one, from the very first planning, the meetings, the conception, the creating the quiet spaces, the figuring out how to staff them and how to train the staff. From the very, very first one. I think there's only, out of all of their relaxed performances, I've only never missed two.
Did the Guthrie come to you and ask you to help them with this? Or
Yeah, the Guthrie originally came to the Autism
which
Society.
helps when they come.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier when the person comes to you and says, hey, we want to do
But
this.
what's really cool is this is actually not something I do as an employee for the Autism Society.
Right.
Now I'm a contractor with the Guthrie, and I'm brought in by their accessibility coordinator who used to be a part of the Autism Society, and now Robin DeCourcy's a full-time staff member at the Guthrie doing their accessibility work.
Okay. Let's switch gears over here to Marie. Marie, you were you're a former stagehand.
Yes.
And you got to experience this performance in a way that a whole lot of people didn't.
As an audience member.
Yes.
Tell us your experience.
You weren't a stagehand for their show. You were an audience member.
Well, first of all, my name is Marie Cooney.
I'm
not
sorry.
Clooney, but it's like Clooney, but I'm Looney Cooney.
See, Mark,
so that's okay.
Mark is waiting for me to mess up.
Yeah.
So
No, everyone
he finally
does.
got me.
Yeah.
But if anyone wants to look me up, it's Marie Cooney.
My apologies.
Stories. My goal with the Guthrie and other theaters is to become a consultant as a person with neurological deficit and challenges, who has worked as a professional stagehand, can walk into a theater and say, that, and that are going to be a problem for me, and maybe others.
Sure.
So I was injured with, I'd been a stagehand at the Guthrie in 1992 when I first moved to the Minnesota area, and I sustained 2 traumatic brain injuries, the second one resulting with a seizure disorder. Ooh. So it's very easy to go into a theater venue and say, do you have strobe lights? No, we've turned them off. Mm-hmm. And then as a professional, I can say, do you have strobe-like lighting? Which is usually a lightning sequence where the lights are just going boom, 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 boom. And it may be more relaxed, it may be less dramatic, but it can still set off seizures and other issues. So as a former theater professional who was a professional stagehand and an Actors Equity Association stage manager, I hope to consult more. And I have done so through Facebook. I've done it with the Frank Theater. I've done it. I got in touch with Robin at the Guthrie, and we're going to meet and see, what worked and what didn't work, and what recommendations I might have. And I've talked to some of even the smaller theaters because they're less likely to trigger migraines or seizures or other difficulties for me. But I have a little kit or my package of accommodations that I think would be great for every theater to have.
Let me circle back to Jillian here real quick. You've been a consultant now with Guthrie. Does that work? And Marisa wants to be a consultant or working to be a consultant with other theaters. Does your work with the Guthrie spill over to other local theater groups?
The Autism Society does a lot of things with a lot of different organizations and a lot of different groups. We've done stuff with the Hennepin Theater Trust. We regularly do things with Stages Theater or Children Theater. We as an organization will work with anyone, not just theaters, any venue to help make things accessible. One of the really cool things about Guthrie and the kind of where I'm at, I don't do the same things Marie does where I can come and say this, and this, though I could and I would. My role is kind of to be there, feet on the ground during the show. So if somebody needs support, if someone's having a hard time in the theater, that I can step in and be like, hey, let me get you some tools to be successful. Let me get you to a quiet place and really be that person with knowledge about how to support people with disabilities in the venue.
You're on-site help.
Yeah, and actually the greatest thing about it is being on-site help. Because of how well the Guthrie plans, because the Guthrie brings in consultants, I actually do very little on show day.
Really?
And I tell them that all the time, that if this goes the way it's supposed to go, then my job will be a walk in the park. Because if we do it all the way we're supposed to do, if we plan accordingly, if we prepare people, then I just sit back and watch a show and kind of look around every once in a while to make sure everyone's okay. And I actually have never had to leave a show to support someone because the Guthrie does such a phenomenal job planning.
Okay.
Everything goes so beautifully smooth that it is a pleasure to just be there just in case.
And in that, and Marie, you have this guide in front of you that is this
with
something,
lots of notes.
right? This is something the Guthrie hands out to audience members, or how does that work?
It's available on the website. They have a whole slew of resources. So they have the performance guide. They're also usually available at the show. They also have the social narrative, which is a story about what to expect and what's going to happen, what the space is going to be like, what the social interactions might be. They also use communication stickers at all of their performances, so you can indicate if you want to be communicated with or if you just want to be left alone. They use the red, green, yellow. So if you have a green sticker, feel free to start a conversation with me. If you have a yellow sticker, don't initiate or approach unless it's for safety reasons. And if there's a red sticker, just leave me alone unless it's an absolute safety issue.
I guess I didn't realize there is some interaction between the performers.
Well, that's for things like the ushers or the staff in the place. But I suppose there are some
audience members.
Yeah, and other audience members. If you don't want to make small talk, if you're wearing a red sticker and you're sitting next to me, I won't ask you what you thought about the first act. I'll just sit there quietly.
Right, okay.
And
as an audience member, I actually was excited that they had this system because I don't know if they had that at the Christmas Carol a number of years ago. But I put Marie, traumatic brain injury, seizure disorder, green sticker, you can talk to me. And I had numerous staff members interact with me, say, oh, another lady is here who has a brain injury. Thanks for coming. And the staff were phenomenal. They really were.
Because that's what I was just going to ask you. I would assume that the staff had gone through, I should say a little bit, but some kind of training so they knew what they,
Yep, like in the very beginning, even with their very, very first performance, they did trainings not just for the staff, but also for the volunteers that were going to be there that day.
Okay.
And then they do ongoing staff training. I got there a little bit early, and Robin's a good friend of mine, so all I wanted to do was give her a hug after the pandemic. So I sat in the back of their usher training that night as they go through all the things, how to support people. This is what all the tools are. This is where you can find the tools. These are the people that can help. So they're doing the pre-training, but then they're also making sure that they're reviewing everything day of, so that it's not like, oh, well, I didn't remember that because someone taught me that 6 months ago. Like, they cover all of it, and they make sure that everyone that's in attendance knows what's to be expected and what's to be different about that show.
Okay.
And that's what makes it really successful.
And Marie, you mentioned something like a lightning sequence. And Jillian, is that in the guide?
Yes.
Like the lightning? So it does prepare the audience member who may have an issue with that to be prepared for that sequence.
Yep. And then they do also sometimes remove things. Like a couple years ago.
That's what I was just going to ask.
Yeah, I saw.
What modifications?
Like I saw Steel Magnolias a couple years ago.
Okay,
sure.
And they greatly lowered the volume of the gunshots. Because you couldn't take the gunshots out of Steel Magnolias. You wouldn't continue the story forward without that. But like with the Christmas Carol, there are some scarier sequences with the Spirit of Christmas. Future that they remove, or that they really, really tone down. So like they kind of figure out what can we modify and what needs to just be done.
And although I primarily work in lighting, as a member of the audience, I did ask, I wonder if they took away some of the theater, the sound surround, because it wasn't coming from all angles. And sometimes it's going to come from the left, the right, the front, the back, or a sequence of sound.
And that can be disorienting then for a lot of people in those
they lower
situations.
So it was
volume.
reduced,
Yeah.
or I don't know for sure, but I think some of it was eliminated.
Sure.
And they add captioning. So
That
there's a
was
bar.
fantastic.
And I have verbal processing delays, and especially when you add accents or Shakespearean language,
yeah.
I
Right,
really
right.
struggle with the verbal processing. So being able to read along with what I was watching and hearing was phenomenal. And like with the Christmas Carol and the accents, like same thing. Like I get so much more when I can be like, wait, what did they just say? And then kind of read along, be like, okay, got it. So.
And the other thing that was wonderful, absolutely wonderful, to word finding deficit again, to the titles, was that the titles were in the middle, the side, and the side at stage level. So I used to work in that for Minnesota Opera at the Ordway, and you're looking up high to read the titles, then you're not seeing what's happening on the stage. But when I walked in and saw that the Guthrie had their titles at audience level where you could read through the titles and still see the action, was phenomenal.
And they have them done in real time. It's like a lot of places will preload them and just hope that it follows through.
Exactly.
Like
really?
they have someone in the theater in real time captioning it. So
they
like
are? Okay.
if it changes, because I did high school theater, nothing really cool. But sometimes you have a script and it doesn't always go the way you planned or the way you practice.
Yeah.
So like, I thought it was really great that they had someone in there that was actually doing, and they do all the time. I've usually been in shows where the house is a little bit more crowded, so I haven't ever been able to like watch as closely as I was this time. But like I spent some time like also just watching the captionist and do his job.
They're very talented too. So
No, you talked with about the performance, about sound. Sound is an issue. Lighting is an issue. What about movement of performers and things on stage? Is that an issue?
Yes.
That can definitely be a
take that as
visual
a yes.
issue.
Yes, they did warnings. They did warnings about instead of Prospero, there was Prospera, played by a woman, Regina Marie Williams, and they talked about that her rule was taken over. So they talk about dysfunction within a family. They talked about how one of the three, there were 3 comic relief characters that were, I refer to them as the fools,
Sure.
and they drank a lot. So, you know, there was a warning of drinking, which can become funny, and when it crosses a line, it can become abusive.
Sure.
So I was surprised how much content of the script was in the warning, as well as the physicality. One of the other things is that they have the stage would rotate, and so they warned that someone's going to enter and the stage is going to turn.
Okay.
So they did do quite a. One of the characters, Ariel, works for Prospera, and he does a lot of the magical stuff to the people who've been.
Loved Ariel.
Ariel's
so
wonderful,
much.
and Ariel does the magic for Prospera to make the people, and I loved this part, who were previously fully able disabled. They fall asleep and they have no control of it. And as a person with a disability, I loved that it was a playfulness throughout the script of the fully abled person became disabled because her dukedom was taken. But within her disability, she had heightened abilities because she had superpowers. And then it just was wonderful that the people with abilities had disabilities,
Sure.
and the disabilities had abilities, and it just kept bouncing back and forth. But Ariel, they put in the guide that he goes through various costume changes and will sprint off stage through the vom or towards the audience. So they wanted to assure that people would be
Aren't
aware of
frightened, yeah.
that and not afraid.
Okay. And
And yet someone could be afraid and then leave the theater and spend time with Julian.
And that's what I'm there for.
And they would be afraid because of the quick.
The quick action or the
quick- so that's
costume.
Or the unpredictableness, or I mean, the show had some heavy messaging too and
Oh,
tones.
and that
Yeah.
could be an issue too. That.
Or even sometimes the issues could have nothing to do with the show itself. And that's the greatest thing about the relaxed performances. People are free to experience how they need to.
Right,
Like you
right.
usually go, I have theater tickets to the Broadway tour that comes to Minnesota. And you sit quietly and you sit in your seat and you mind your business and you don't move and you don't talk and phone's off, and like it's different with the relaxed performance. If you need to move, move. If you need to fidget. If you're someone who makes a lot of noises
Yeah,
when
I
you're
was gonna-
excited,
yeah.
make your noises. If you have to ask the person you're with 800 questions to understand what's happening, ask 800 questions. This is a place where like theater is a home for everyone, and that
Yeah.
everyone is welcome in that home exactly as they are. There's no expectations except to be kind and accept one another.
Is the attendance pretty good for a relaxed performance?
Yeah, they do really well.
I would think so.
And they do keep the attendance a little bit down because sometimes crowds can be a little bit more
Okay,
overwhelming.
okay.
Yeah.
But they're also not just, there's no one checking your disability card at the door. So people without disabilities are welcome at relaxed performances as well as people with disabilities. And I think that is an important part, that it's not
is, yeah.
separate. It is fully inclusive. This is a place for all of the community, and it's just a place that we're going to make more welcoming and accepting for people that need to experience theater a little bit differently. And I've long said that we can't talk about accessibility in terms of just schools and hospitals and public buildings like the post office.
Right.
Like what really makes a culture is things like art and
The
community and
arts and entertainment.
And if we can't have our culture be just as inclusive as things like medical facilities, then we're failing as a society. People deserve to experience all aspects of culture, not just those that are considered the basic human needs. Because I find art to be a human need.
so, Marie, was this your first relaxed performance?
I've been to them before
Okay.
at the Guthrie and at other facilities.
Okay.
I've been to them. I used to be an Ivy Award evaluator, and I would specifically ask to be sent to any show that had a relaxed performance.
Okay.
And apparently Robin was at the Children's Theater
Yeah.
when I did their review.
Okay.
But the Ivy Awards aren't being done anymore.
Okay.
For
So-
the, I was going
Go
to
ahead.
ask, between, well, for, let's say the Guthrie, how many relaxed performances throughout a year would they have?
I believe that they were scheduled for somewhere around 6 this year. I know that
Okay.
number did change because of COVID.
Yeah, 'cause of
there were
COVID.
some things that changed when we started to see the Omicron spike.
Oh, right.
But it's typically one per show.
Okay.
Okay, one. Oh,
And
because
so
that's right,
their,
the show
their,
comes in, it's there for a while.
yeah, their schedule is about, what, 8 shows per year generally? Or
That's
6?
a fantastic question that I don't have the answer to.
Well, I might have to find Joseph Haas again to talk to him.
What are the other theaters that offer a relaxed performance?
On a
said the
regular
children,
basis, the
yeah.
children's and stages. I would love to see Hennepin Theater Trust join that rank.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first and probably the closest to my heart was I got to see Disney's The Lion King
That
as a
was the
sensory-friendly show.
Oh, okay.
I sat next to a little girl who was also autistic like me, and The Lion King was her special interest. I don't think, and her mom knew that they weren't going to make it through the whole show. That there's no way her daughter was going to make it through the whole Broadway show, but so they came for the beginning because that's where all her favorite songs were.
Oh, right,
I don't
sure.
actually think I saw any of the beginning because I was so enamored with this little like 4-year-old autistic girl next to me and her joy in seeing all of the songs that she watches over and over and over on YouTube and seeing them in person, that I just cried through the whole first half watching her get to have this experience that this family never would have been able to have without that performance. So
And Bill Devins, the head of the lighting department, notified me, and he was really, really excited that this was the first show coming in. And the actors were trained that if a little kid wants to pet the lion, that's okay. So, whereas in another performance that would have been, no, don't
Yeah,
don't
don't
touch
touch
the
the-
actors.
yeah.
But
right,
Bill said, Marie, I wish you had been there because
They did.
there was so much that freedom
The
and
interaction.
that there could be interaction,
Sure.
and it wasn't.
Yeah.
it was beautiful. Like then, like in the beginning of that show, like the animals all come in from the back
Yep.
and like they come down the center aisle, and like you could see the kids like just reaching out, and like it went so slow, like from what I imagine it normally did, and just it was the first time I had the gift of attending a sensory-friendly show because this was. God, this had to have been like 2016, 2007. It had to have been 16.
That was the second touring show, correct? Because
Maybe.
we had actually seen the first tour, or actually opening, at the Orpheum, because it was the only stage in the country that was large enough to house the production before they took it to Broadway.
And like I see other things like being a Broadway ticket holder. Like just a couple shows ago, I don't remember what show I was at, but like I watched a whole snafu with the handicap seating stuff, like in the middle of a show. Them like taking people out because like people were seated in the wrong place, and there was enough room for everyone. They were like this usher just got so struck on like everyone needs to be in the right place, in the right place, in the right place.
Yeah.
They like we literally took people with disabilities that just were trying to watch a Broadway show out into the hallway to sort this out. And you could have just left them there and dealt with this at intermission. Like,
yeah, no
I was
kidding.
like genuinely upset for them. Or like for me, I'm horribly spoiled in that I have season tickets to lots of things in Minnesota, including the Lynx. The Lynx, I have accessible seats because like being autistic, my body gets very overwhelmed when it can't move the way it wants to move.
Sure.
So sitting in like teeny tiny little like stadium seating is
Right.
really, really hard. There are some theaters that won't let me purchase accessible seating. Like even though being in a chair that I can move it backwards, I can move it forwards, I can
in a
change how I
folding
sit.
chair.
Yep.
Like that is much more accessible for me, but because I don't have a visible physical disability,
Right.
I don't actually need.
But that's
disability
pretty
seating.
arrogant that with someone as an invisible disability that they make a call that they have no business making.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So, Marie, you talked about, we have just a couple minutes left, you talked about having a kit
Yes.
that you work with
When-
in situations such
When
as
I
that.
go to everywhere I go, I have my visor on. And the thing is, if the lights are beginning to bother me, I can tilt my head,
So the
and
visor.
nobody even knows that I'm doing it. So all of the flashing lights can be here. During the, I used to sail competitively with the Wyzetta Yacht Club.
Sure.
And I was telling friends I just couldn't go to theater, and a friend said, bring a sleep mask. So I walked in, and there was a sailboat on stage, and I wanted to see the whole blocking of how they were going to do that.
Uh-huh.
And even though the strobe lights were taken down, I had to watch that whole scene with a sleep mask and listen to the vocabulary, listen to the storm, and try to imagine what was happening on stage. One of the things I have said to other theaters is I have 2 pairs of amber glasses. I have my light amber, which I usually wear indoors, and then I have my dark amber. I went to see Dr. Michael Lee with the University of Minnesota. He's a neuro-ophthalmologist, and a lot of people with brain injuries need the dark amber to take the blues out, and some people need the blue to take the white out.
Okay.
So, and then the other great thing about these glasses, they're called heavy glare glasses, is there's
An insert?
it's an insert, it's a foam insert, so when you put it into the glasses, it takes all ambient lights. Stuff can't come at you from every,
Okay.
underneath, from the side. Extremely important when I drive, because if a motorcycle comes by me, I'm not getting
The
the
glare.
flash of the glare, the sun off the,
Off the chrome and that on the motorcycle.
right. So,
I wouldn't mind those glasses then.
and then I just wanted to say not all headaches are alike. I can have headaches where ibuprofen is appropriate. I can have headaches where Excedrin for headaches is appropriate. And because I'm on blood thinners, the only thing I'm supposed to take is Tylenol. But I did bring Midrin. That's the short name for it. And it, through the COVID pandemic, it has not been available. But I did get it with a compound pharmacist, Lloyd's on Snelling, was able to make it under the direction of my neurologist. So the ability to make noises is, at one point when there's all this dancing and there's flash, flash, flash on multiple lights, I tipped my head and I could still see the actors, but not the lights that were above
Okay.
the second story of the building.
Sure.
And then I've talked with lighting designers and said, the rope light that chases across back and forth is, in theory, not perceivable, but it is for me.
Sure.
And then the designer for Raisin in the Sun, I met him this week, and he said, what were the things? And I said, it was the speed of lighting, the variance of color, the temperature, and things of that sort. But the Midrin is a migraine reliever, and because it was a relaxed performance, I opened up my ginger ale and I took 2 pills that enabled me to finish the rest of the show.
And as they're being there as support, next time let us know. Because if you need someone to describe to you what is happening on stage when you can't look,
Yeah,
that is something you can ask the support people that are in the house for.
right, okay.
Well, great. Our time has come to an end.
As usual, I want to thank our guest, Marie Cooney.
Thank you.
How's that new puppy?
New puppy is a handful.
And Jillian Nelson, you don't have a new puppy though, right?
No new puppy, just an 11-and-a-half-year-old puppy.
Well, those count too.
Yeah.
Also a handful.
Yeah, I understand that. Want to thank you both for coming today. I'm Charlie Brose, and this has been Disability Landscape. We'll see you next time.